Welcome to the Warrior Razor Podcast. We're your hosts, Angela and Kerry.
We all need help and support to stay future focused and challenged to courageously pursue the life God has called us to live. What we do matters.
Here on the Warrior Razor Podcast, we seek Jesus first and use the skills, talents, and passions He has given us second.
Good morning, warriors. Time to start your day. Keep your head up, marching on. Don't let nothing stand in your way. Don't let nobody tear you down. You got to proudly wear your crown. 'Cause you're a warrior, warrior.
Well, welcome to the Warrior Razor Podcast. I'm here with my good friend, Kerry Smith. My name is Angela Johnson.
Hey guys.
We're so excited to have you guys with us. And for those of you that are tuning in on YouTube, you're going to get to see our lovely faces. Carrie, though, if you're watching online, she has to watch the room she's recording in. She has a little spotlight. Ready? And go.
I gotta show you. What?
Freeze frame
I love
spotlight.
the sun. I love the sun, just not right this second.
No, yeah. So if she shifts and moves around, it's because she's being blinded by the light.
That's right. Yeah, and not a good way today, though.
Absolutely. Well, we're excited to have you guys back with us in this conversation. We are actually going to kick off a new series called the Small Beginning series.
So good.
And this
So
was
good.
actually anchored. Yeah, it's anchored in a hallmark passage in Zechariah 4:10. And I'm going to read the NLT version for everybody. But the verse in Zechariah 4:10 says, "Do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin, to see the plumb line in Zerubbabel's hand." Now that's a tongue twister. Zerubbabel. Say that 10 times fast.
Yes.
Gary, will you read your version that you have there for us?
Yeah. So I have the ESV version, and it says, "For whoever has despised the day of small things shall rejoice and shall see the plumb line in the hand of I say Zerubbabel. I don't know which one's right, but it's still fun to say either way."
Yeah, it's that's a name. Can you imagine
Yep.
his mother like shouting
Yeah.
that one? He had to have a nickname. I wonder what his nickname was.
Z. They called him Z.
Okay. Well, I actually, in the Bible study that I wrote, Fruitful, I have a whole section on how our fruit is planted, and we talk about the seed. And so that's what Carrie and I are going to help dissect a little bit today. But I want to take it a step back and talk about that passage where it talks about the plumb line and why this passage is just so power packed and such just it's just an amazing scripture when you just kind of like sit in it for a second. Because he says the Lord rejoices to see the plumb line in his hand. And we have to think about, okay, what the heck is a plumb line?
Right.
And in engineering, I actually have a friend who showed me one, and I've been able to see it and use it. But it's a weighted, it's like a bobber. It looks like a giant bobber, like a fishing bobber, but it's pointed on one end and it's super heavy. Lead, I don't know the material that it's made out of, but it hangs from a vertical point on a string. And in building and construction, they'll still even use it to this day. It centers an object on, it will vertically center an object. So that means that whatever they're building from hinges from a centered position.
Yes.
And it's so cool because this thing literally fits in the palm of your hand. And when you look at this passage, it's not that the Lord rejoiced to see the work finished, the final stone. And this passage is specifically talking about the temple being rebuilt. And there was so much more about that. Read that passage, get some historicity on all of that. But it was a profound piece in the time frame that the temple was being rebuilt. And so it wasn't that the Lord rejoiced to see the final stone go in the wall, but that they had the tool in their hand to begin the work.
Started. Yes.
Yeah.
So amazing. And I feel like, think about the small tool and then the vast project that comes from it. And without that small tool, what all the things that could go wrong, if you don't start and have that firm centered foundation, things lined up correctly, can you imagine just it wouldn't last as long. You might fall over in the middle of it. I mean,
Yeah.
not necessarily a carpenter, engineer, builder person, but I mean, I can even understand the importance of that.
Right, and it refers to the Lord as, throughout scripture as our cornerstone, and so that
Mhm.
cornerstone is what if that stone's not put
Yep.
in the perfect position, everything hinges on that, and the
Yeah.
tool that helps determine center was
Yeah.
what God just got so excited over, and we were
Mhm.
talking about this before the show start about how so much of our society
Mhm.
is like, "Okay, what's the end result? How do you get
Yeah.
to the finish line?" What
Yep.
are your thoughts on about that, especially, like, beginning something, Carrie?
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like so much of what we get to see is just the finished product of people.
Right.
They don't nobody really wants to talk about, their first step or their first, what they might consider a failure, their beginning steps that caught that, where you're walking like a little drunk little toddler and trying to figure it out, right? Nobody
Right.
wants to talk about that stuff, but that's the stuff that like really matters. The end product is awesome. It's great that people get to the finish line and, make money from their business or a flourishing ministry that they've created. But it's like those beginning things are what really that small obedience to God's call in your life, that
Right.
small voice that he's like, hey, do the thing. And you're like, I don't want to do the thing. And he's like, do the thing. And you're like, okay, I'll do the thing. It might not sound important. It might not seem important, but it's that first little step that then gets you to the grand. Why don't we talk about it? But we don't. We
Right,
just
we
see the
need
curated, beautiful end, you know?
and to celebrate that, and
Yeah.
I just love how
Yeah.
you give that visual analogy of, like, a little toddler, like, think about the parent on the other end of those first steps. We lose
Our
our
we
mind.
lose it. We lose it because we're so proud and so excited.
I know,
Yes.
sidebar though, but then when you have the second, you're like, "You could crawl a little bit longer because things are
Right?
about to get super real and
Y
crazy
you
here."
don't realize what you're wishing for with that first one.
I know. It's like, "Dang it, now I gotta childproof all my cabinets again."
Yes. No, I'm not sitting down for 3 more years.
Right, and there is something just beautifully poetic about that, like, in the
Yeah.
infancy stage, like, you
Yeah.
can leave a baby kind of, like, on their back under their little plaything, and then,
Mhm.
they're not going anywhere, but
Right.
once they start to
Yeah.
make those signs of progress toward
Yeah.
crawling, then cruising, and then they're taking those steps, the
Yeah.
world changes because now they
Sure
have
does.
access,
Yeah.
and they're making moves. And I think
Yeah.
when we equate that back to the journey that the Lord has called each and every one of us to,
Mhm.
regardless of our season, regardless of our station in life, He's called us to do something. He's called us, the word says, to trust Him and to do good. Well, that doing part requires
Yeah.
action.
It does.
So, yeah, I think that we don't, as a society, as women, as mothers, as followers of Jesus, we don't celebrate those small steps as much because we've also done a really kind of not so great job of putting people on amazing pedestals and thinking that they're infallible, and we have some kind of like hero worship of some even in the Christians in
Oh,
even in the
yeah.
Christian world. I don't know, you have thoughts on that. I know. What do you
Oh,
what do
yeah.
you
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that we have a very distorted and I think it's a tool of the devil, a
Mm,
very
mm,
distorted and warped view of of how, um of how people get to where they are and how
yeah.
people and when they get there, we have this distorted, warped view of their perfectionism
Mhm.
and how because you do get to see the highlights and it's fine. Give all the highlights. I'm not
Right,
saying
right,
it's
right.
bad to give the highlights of your life, but there is this idea that like, oh my gosh, they're amazing. Look at what they do. All this, you see all this great, great, great. And then they make a mistake and they fall. And it's like, we're like, oh, crushed. Why are we crushed? They're
Yeah. Oh,
humans.
yes,
They're
they're
just
humans,
like
they're
us.
fallible.
Yes,
Yes.
they're just like us. That there's no reason for us to like have this, hero worship them as heroes, and then when they fall, we're crushed. And it's like, and I'm not saying I'm saying we because I'm like that.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
see someone that I just love, and oh, they're doing so great things, and I just love what they've done. And then they fall, and I'm like, oh, that's horrible. How did they let that happen? Oh my gosh, they're human, Carrie. Like
yeah,
they are a sinner just like you are, trying to make it in this world. It's just you see so many of the good things that then we can't somehow, and I don't know why, there might be some science to it, but there's somehow we just can't we don't look at them as like humans anymore. We almost look at them as like God, you
Well, and
know?
that's exactly it. The only barometer for Christ likeness is Christ himself.
Yeah, right.
And so when we hold people to that, it's an
Mhm.
intangible thing even for
Yeah.
them. But I
Yep.
think we see them when we have this like, oh, and we're scrolling through our Instagram, like, oh my gosh, she's doing the things on all the things that I want to do. And but here's another way to look at it too. That person on that screen that you're scrolling through, she doesn't know your friends. She doesn't know the people that you go to work with. She doesn't know the people that you interact with on a daily basis.
Yep.
And there's
Yep.
nobody that can meet those people except for you. And that's who the Lord is calling you to. And and the Lord has convicted me of this too. It's like, Angela, whatever ground you're standing on,
Mhm.
that is your platform.
Yep. Yep.
That's where
Agree.
that's your pulpit, that's your microphone, that's your platform. You don't need 500 million followers to have a difference in this world.
Yep.
But the Lord uses the people that do have those kind of followerships too. So I'm not negating
Absolutely.
that or saying
Mm-mm.
that just because that they're there, that doesn't, that they're not worthy of
Right.
having a voice in this world.
Right.
But
Right.
also, don't despise your place in this world.
Mhm.
Don't despise your seemingly small beginnings, because again, the Lord rejoices to
Yeah.
see that work
Yeah.
begin.
Yes. Yes. And I'm thinking, it just made me think about when you said where you're standing as your platform. And if you're a mom,
Mhm.
man, your home should be your platform, right?
Yeah, right.
Your front porch should be your flat platform. Your the cubicles around you, right, at your workplace could be your platform. And all
Yeah.
those seem so small and insignificant because I think of the grand things we get to witness with how media is right now. But those things, man, those are not small to God.
No.
Those are huge to him. And I think we somehow just can't keep the importance of those in our hearts for a very long time. We have to be reminded of it a lot. I know I have to be reminded of it a lot.
For real. Constant reminders that what we're
Yep.
doing matters.
Yeah.
As long as we're seeking him in all
Mhm.
the things,
Yep.
from the big moment that we wake up, he wants to have that interaction with
Yes.
us.
Yes.
He
Yep.
wants to have a part to play in our daily life.
Yep.
As long as we're seeking him first, and then we're trying to center our life, going
Yep.
back to that plumb
That
line
plumb line.
on
Yep.
his perfect will for us,
Mhm.
he will let us be successful because he wants us to, because ultimately he gets the glory
He
and
is
if it's
glorified.
pointing back to him.
Yep. Yep.
And that's what he's called us to, love God and love others. And so how
Yep.
we do that matters.
Yes.
So yeah, we're gonna be doing some fun things with this series.
Mhm.
Just I'm excited to bring in some voices, because
Yeah.
we've already had Carrie and I, we have a cohort every year. We're thinking about adding more to it. So stay tuned. Go check us out on warriorraiser.com for information
Yeah.
about that. But we take a cohort of women every year who are called to ministry, who are called to leadership, who are called to entrepreneurship, who have a passion and they have this compelling desire to put the Lord first in all that they do, whether it's in the sacred or in the secular.
Yep.
But these are women that they're doing things, or maybe they haven't even begun yet, but they can't let it go.
Yeah.
Think about it. Their mind, I like the word perseverate, because you think
Yeah.
about it even when you're in the midst of doing other things. And if you're on the other end of this audio or the recording, you're sitting here like, that's me. I have this crazy dream. I know it's a God-given dream, because you wouldn't have concocted it on your own. But if you can't let it go, you can't sit it down. And maybe there's been seasons where it's been a dream deferred, but the Lord is continuing to bring it back to your remembrance. That's where Carrie and I really want to come alongside you with the material and the resources that we're providing, even with things like this, to know that, like, hey, sister, you're not alone. You're not
Mhm.
alone in carrying that dream. And the Lord wants to see it to fruition if he's given it to, if he's implanted it within your spirit, like a little tiny seed, there's going to be exponential outcome that come from that if you cultivate it, if you
Yep.
nurture it, and if you allow it to do the work that he's called it to do.
Yep.
So
Yep. If you allow it to be as small as God wants it to be and you rejoice in that smallness. That's
yeah.
all right. That's all right too, you know?
Who's that artist that sang the song Dream Small? Do you know what song I'm talking
Yes.
about? Oh, I
Mhm.
love the lyrics. We'll put it in the show notes, but
It's
that one
so
gets
good.
every time, because it talks about it's the mama singing songs over her babies.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
the woman that's been leading Bible study year after year after year.
Yep.
It's the friend that goes to visit the widow in her home, or the shut-in, or that does the prison ministry. It's like all
Yep.
those little seemingly insignificant things to the world
Yep.
that matter.
So good.
Our
So
friend
good.
Erica said on a team call, she said she can't quote it as her own, but we're gonna give her street cred today.
Yeah, we will.
Erica Sheets, if you're listening to us today, we're giving you the quotation for this one. But she said, "Small hinges swing open big doors, or swing wide open big doors. Small hinges
Good.
swing
Yes.
big doors."
It's so true.
I think that's such a beautiful just picture of the fact
Mm.
that the small things matter.
Yep. Yep. Huge, huge. I when I think of that, and I've been thinking about that for a while
Mhm.
since she said it. And it's one of those, I was like, okay, what are the small hinges in my life? And I was kind of
Yeah.
thinking through that. And it's like, it's a small hinge is like praying with my kids before they go to school. Like
Yeah.
that's gonna swing big doors someday in
Yeah.
their lives and the kids' lives they meet, whoever they influence one day, and so really, I think sometimes writing down some of our small hinges so we can say, "Oh man, no, what God can do with that is amazing." I think we just need to not just say it, but like think about your life and make
Yeah.
it practical. What are your small hinges? And that it's powerful. It's powerful.
And then to not negate the big dreams too, the big
Mhm.
doors.
It's so
So
good. Yep, it's
in the
both
whole
and.
process, yeah, it's
Yep,
a both and. I love
yep,
that. And
yep.
Carrie and I, we come alongside these women in our team, and you here on our show, and we want to encourage you, write the small hinges, write the small beginnings, write them all down, because if you don't have them somewhere, there's nothing to hold yourself accountable to.
Yeah,
Talk to somebody, dream share. Dreamers and doers, they can't, it's hard to carry the dream alone. You know the term solopreneur? It's a lonely place to be when you're carrying a dream. I mean, I can attest to that. In 2020, the Lord gave me the vision for Warrior Raiser in the ministry. And it was, I mean, when I would refer to we in any capacity, it was me, myself, and I had like split personalities on social media or wherever I was. And it's like
mhm.
nobody knew that it was just all me pedaling behind the
Yeah,
scenes. I
yep.
felt like one of those traveling people on like the unicycle, playing the ukulele with the harmonica and the drums snap behind my back,
Drums.
swing my arms, and I'm like doing all the things.
Yes.
We
So
have
funny.
to begin. And the Lord, he
Yeah.
loves that. He
Yep.
rejoices in it. He's like,
Yep.
you look ridiculous, but I love your heart. I love that you're stepping forward in obedience. And you know what? Well done, because I'm going to bring people alongside you. And
Yep.
they don't maybe have the exact dream, but they've got their dreams. And
Mhm.
the Lord is
Yes.
going to weave those people into your circle and into your influence. And if you didn't hear our episode last time, we talked about who's in your tribe. And
Mhm.
when you're dreaming the dreams, making sure those people in your tribe matter, because they
Yes.
they have an influence over how you again cultivate that dream. So yeah, the
Good.
accountability is huge. And if you've got
Yep.
a dream, if you've got these small hinges, Carrie, what do you do with your small dreams or your small hinges? What have you done? And can you talk to? And I don't want to put you on the spot, but
Yeah, no, I would say some of my small hinges. So oh gosh, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, God really placed in my heart to start a podcast.
mm,
And I was like, "Podcast? I don't know how to do that. I don't know what to use, all these things." And so that was my dream. But some of my small hinges were like, "Hey, talk to your friend Sarah. She just started a podcast. I bet she'll
yeah,
tell you."
yeah,
I wanted to be like, "Oh, she's not going to share with me. She's so busy. She's got her thing." Nope. Small hinge was for me to talk to her. And
yeah,
then from there, another small hinge was for me to um, just start writing down like what would the content be, what do I want to do. Another small hinge, so for about a year I just did my own content and kind of did some teaching, biblical teaching. And then a small hinge was, hey, what other women are doing really amazing courageous things, so it's called Gathered Courage, and that are doing some courageous things through Jesus that you could then put out into the world and share. And so then I started interviewing people. So well, and then another small hinge is when he asked me to lay it down, about two
oh,
and a half years later.
yeah, we
Yeah,
cannot forget that one.
we cannot forget that small hinge, and I'm still kind of holding it open-handed to see what he wants to do with it, if I ever pick it back up or do anything with it, but, um, Yeah, it's interesting to think about the little things that I had to like the little hinges I had to say yes to without really knowing what he was going to do with it. And to be honest, like I didn't have some huge following. I didn't have, my social I was also working a full-time job and all the things. It was during the pandemic. So, there are lots of things that I look back and I could call failures and I could be like, "Oh, because it didn't grow the way I thought it would or wanted it to or whatever." But man, do I have some really sweet comments from friends that are like, "Hey, I listened to that and it changed my life. Hey, you remember that
Mm,
guest you had, Betsy? The way she defined courage? Like, golly, Carrie, I think about that every day, and I'm like,
wow.
okay. So whatever that, however small that hinge was, it's it's swinging some doors for people and
Yeah.
it's making people think differently. And so yeah, I guess that would be kind of my example.
Well, and I think that that's another key element when we think about the small beginnings. If we think about anything the Lord has implanted within us, it usually starts
Yeah.
really tiny, like a
Yep.
seed. Even think about how the human life begins. And you
Mhm.
equate it to the size of like in utero, and they have those apps that track. Like today, you have a
Oh, yeah.
poppy seed in you. Tomorrow, you have an olive, and then you have
Yes,
a mango.
avocado seed. Yeah. Yep, yep.
But it's like those seeds, they are so small, but out from them comes something huge and amazing. And I have used this quote personally, and I claim it as my own now because I don't know who the originator of it was. But you can count the seeds in an apple, but you can never count the apples in a seed,
Love that.
because it's like there's such an exponential factor with that. And just think, like,
Mhm.
with your podcast, like, you have a guest on and you make a phone call or whatever, and then even with this, like, this was a small hinge opening because I laid the podcast down for a season 2, and then the Lord wove our hearts together,
Yep,
and
yep,
here we are together
yep.
on this journey. And so this
Yeah.
is a small beginning in and of
Mhm,
itself too,
mhm.
really, if we
Sure
think
is,
about it, because
sure
who
is.
knows what the doors will open for this, but then the exponential outcomes that could come from this as well, and this in the apples and these seeds.
Yes,
So
yes.
to the listener on the other end, to the watcher, if you've stuck with us this far on our YouTube channel, you never know what the outcome of your obedience will be, but you're
Yep,
responsible to be obedient if he's called you
yes.
to it.
That's for
So
sure.
don't worry about what happens the way down the line, thinking about those people on social media and, oh, to aspire to be that place. We don't know how they began. I mean, sometimes they share that with us, but you don't see it all. You
Mm-mm,
don't see
mm-mm.
all the grind, all the hustle. So
Yep,
to the person that's watching and saying, okay, I know that God is asking me to do something, to step out boldly, to begin something, even if it looks small and seemingly insignificant. Think about the plumb line. I mean,
yep.
it really is it's a measuring tool. It can't even it's not even like a hammer where it can drive a
Right,
nail into anything. It
right.
literally is a standalone tool that just measures something, and he rejoices over to see it begin or be
Yeah,
even used. So,
yes, I love that.
you have any lasting thoughts for this theme, the episode series that we're starting here?
I'm excited about the people we're going to be interviewing
Yeah.
because I think there's going to be, some secular, some sacred. I think it's going to be a really neat for you to hear. Some will think that will say they're still in their small beginning,
Yeah.
and some are really successful
Yeah.
and doing the thing, and their small beginning has snowballed, and they're swinging big old doors, and that's
Yeah.
exciting, and we can
Yeah.
celebrate them. We can also celebrate the small and everything in between. So I'm really excited about that.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we just are so excited to have you guys join us for this series and joining us on the podcast. And to all of our fellow warrior raisers, aim your arrows well.
Thank you again for listening in today to the Warrior Razor podcast. Angela and I are just so grateful for you. So thanks for listening today. Wanted to remind you, if you have Instagram, Facebook, those two socials, find us at Warrior Razor and get to know us a little more, see our posts, things like that, like our page. We would appreciate it. And we mentioned today about the tribe, Warrior Women Tribe, and we want to get you information on that if you want more. So head to the website, warriorrazor.com, and you'll see a tab for the tribe and find more information there. Thanks again for listening today, and we'll see you next time.